Okay, you are live. Yeah, I don't think the Instagram's working, but that's okay. Welcome, if you're watching. We are the Futurists. I'm Brett King, and joining me is my good friend David Orban. And we thought, given it's a Friday and we are approaching the future, we thought, why not have a bit of a live chat about the future? We do this when we get together. We have these discussions about the future, and it occurred to us that it could actually make a pretty good live session on Facebook and so forth. So glad you guys could join us if you're watching, and we're happy to jump into this session on Friday. David, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It is great to be having a conversation online as well after a wonderful dinner. I think last time it was in Dubai,
It
but
was, yeah. Yeah, are you going? You seen Dubai is crazy right now with the floods and everything.
it is, I think, very interesting to ask ourselves what are the constraints and the limits of infrastructure,
Mm,
how and why they were built in a given way, and what kind of unanticipated event they can withstand, right? Seeing all those cars floating by
yeah.
and the shopping centers flooded is a reminder that definitely as much money and effort as we put in setting up our cities, colonies in the desert,
Mm.
they do have their limits.
It's interesting. I saw a photo of the Saudi desert, just from last week as well, covered in green and flowers, because it had rained unexpectedly, heavily in that area. And you wonder whether, first of all, there's been a lot of debate as to whether Dubai's cloud seeding project created this, but they've been very clear in the press that they didn't seed these clouds. Now, having said that, Dubai, and even with Qatar with the World Cup, we have got a sense that these cities are trying to or engineer themselves around extreme temperatures and so forth. But just something like this shows us that actually, as a species, we still have some limitations. We don't have control over the weather. We certainly don't have control over climate. Um, but I'm interested in us exploring. Maybe we can have a chat about how you feel we're going to adapt to these changes. If Dubai is now, because of changing weather patterns, going to be subject to these types of rainfalls more frequently, and they don't have any drainage, does that mean they have to, now install, this new infrastructure for this? But where do we go in terms of climate mitigation and climate resilience? This is just a very small example of this. How much effort is mankind going to have to put into sort of mitigating these issues?
So I believe that it is extremely important not only for governments to think about what they can do and what they should be doing, both in the midterm and the long term, but that they and collectively we empower individuals to make decisions for themselves. In my opinion, that is in very large part a fundamental key for resilience. In order for millions or billions of people to work out what works for them at their scale. And the two foundational components for that is education and empowerment.
Mm,
Without knowledge and the ability to act on the knowledge, we will be exposed to the decisions that are made for us. And too often, our belief that centralized decision making is superior, more robust, better informed than those made on the ground is misplaced. Our governments often make tragically stupid decisions, and we have to be able to evaluate critically whether we are comfortable with them. And the faster the loop of this evaluation and feedback, the better both individuals and governments can adapt.
I mean, I understand the politics of climate is difficult because until lives are threatened, if you're asking the general populace to support billions of dollars in funding for climate mitigation, then you've got to be pretty sure, in terms of political exposure, that no one's going to say after you spend the money that, no, that wasn't worth it. Having said that, if you wait until the point where it's doing real damage, then your ability to mitigate the financial effects of climate are going to be significantly reduced. But also, we are going to see lives lost. One thing that comes into my mind throughout this process is the forecasts in terms of eco-refugees that we see. And I wrote about this in the last book, but the estimates now range somewhere between 500 million and 1.8 to 2 billion eco-refugees in the 2050s. And the half a billion sounds absurdly low, given that last year the UN estimates there was 130 million eco-refugees, right? And just think about Bangladesh. If the southern half of Bangladesh was flooded and so forth. Imagine those numbers climbing pretty rapidly.
The most vivid scene is the opening chapter of Ministry for the Future.
Yes.
Where what we see and what is depicted is a wet bulb temperature event where unless you are in a reliably and constantly air-conditioned environment, the natural combination of temperature and humidity kills you because your mammalian body cannot thermoregulate by expelling the heat with water by sweating. And different temperatures with different humidity are expressing these conditions, but soon larger and larger areas in Pakistan, in India, are expected to be under those conditions. And very simply, either everyone has reliable air conditioning, meaning that there are no blackouts during the very moment when it is most used, or people end up dying within a few hours, literally within a few hours. So there is even no time to say, we have to evacuate. Well, you cannot evacuate tens of millions of people in 3-4 hours to prevent them dying. So it would be a huge...
in Delhi, wasn't it, or something, or India in the Ministry for the Future?
It was in India. It wasn't in the city. It was in a smaller, more rural area, the scene. But it will be a civilizational test. Do we allow millions of people dying in a situation that cannot be handled as it happens, but it must be handled before the fact? If we allow that to happen, it will be hard for me to call us and ourselves a civilization that is a label that we potentially wouldn't deserve.
Yeah, I think this is sort of gets at the heart of the problem. When I sort of discuss this with people, particularly the eco-refugee situation, which it is driven by two primary factors. factors, extreme weather events such as flooding and temperature changes, but more so by food scarcity, because we know that crops are going to be are already showing sensitivity to increased temperatures. The question I sort of have is, right now, if I was to say, well, we need to start building cities for these eco-refugees that are going to be displaced in the 2050s, no one's going to be willing to put their hand in their pocket, right? Well, who's going to pay for that is the refrain we hear, from modern capitalists in this scenario. But there is a point where, as you've sort of rightly pointed out, in terms of lives, the cost of human lives, where it'll get to a certain point where that question is no longer morally or ethically sound. But I don't know what that number is, how many people would have to die before our current economic model, which is like the free market has to solve this problem, that we recognize that it can't, and that we recognize we still have to mobilize and do something about it, regardless of the cost.
Definitely, some of our current economic systems and models are short-sighted. They are unable to factor in the incredible benefit of having the resource of humans that is better deployed and better enabled to flourish, adding to the economy of the place where it is active, than leaving things as they are and only thinking about the next quarter, or maybe in terms of a year or a few years. And so we do need an increased ability to incorporate in our economies, in the pricing of the investment decisions we make, the upside that is produced in 5, 10, or 20 years down the line by the fact that millions of people are thriving rather than suffering and withering away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is really the sort of core issue that I see that will be brought to light by climate, AI, technology, unemployment, and so forth, is that the inequality issue that you raise is going to sort of be a fundamental question. And then, we hear a lot of talk about universal basic income as a solution to techno unemployment. Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk all talk about this. It seems like they sort of know what's coming with technology and employment. But the issue with the whole UBI thing is it also creates this permanent stratification. It's sort of back to the old feudal system from an economics. Though you remember, if you've seen The Expanse, the sci-fi series,
yeah.
I'm sure. So do you remember
Yeah.
they talk about people on basic? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's talked almost as if this poor class of people that are on basic, and then you've got the others who have access to employment and wealth and assets and things like that, being in a different class of people. And people are terrified if they have to go and live on basic income. But that's sort of like, we could use UBI to sort of extend capitalism for a little bit of time, but it occurs to me that we have to, it's only a short-term fix.
I am not an economist, and I am not necessarily able to correctly classify and label the various systems that playing around the knobs and the parameters of production and consumption and taxation and regulation we can come up with. But similarly to how the challenge that Churchill launched when he quipped, democracy is the worst form of government except every other form. Yes. And we thought he was joking rather than really saying, listen, I couldn't come up with something better, but I know that we need to. Well, the same way we have to challenge ourselves to understand how we can evolve and debug the system that today is working to a large degree to the point that the alternative experiments have been mostly abandoned, but we also know its limits, and they are very, very vivid in societies like the U.S., where individual flourishing is severely impacted and diminished by the constraints that are put on the lives by the current economic system and the social contract. The brutality of the American social contract that says your value to society is equal to your economic output. And as a corollary, when your economic output goes to zero, your value to society becomes zero, manifests itself in the desperate individuals and the literal diminishing of life expectancy of entire populations that cannot cope with the lack of recognition of their dignity and the value that they bring to society.
And if AI really is the greatest productivity tool the corporate world has ever seen, which we believe it will be, then the most productive a company can be is, if you want the most productive form of Uber, then you eliminate human drivers, right? Because that automation gives you simplicity, gives you higher margin, all of that. So my fear is that, in sort of economics 101 terms, that AI really is sort of breaking that connection between the labor force and supply and demand anyway, right? Despite, even if you can have various arguments about retraining people and so forth, but you're not going to train them as coders. You're not going to train truck drivers as coders because AI is going to be coding. But it does raise this really interesting issue about the role of work in society moving forward, right?
So I find it laughably offensive to expect that, for example, in the category of jobs, which is the most prevalent in all of the 50 states in the US, which is truck driver, and where the median age of truck drivers is 50, the answer to the coming age of self-driving trucks and convoys of 10 of them that maybe will need one driver and so on, with a 90% loss of jobs or more, well, the answer is fine because all of them can learn to be web developers. It is just so condescendingly stupid.
It is, yeah. But that's sort of the key problem, isn't it? It's like, as you talk about, it's that value of the human, and like the other thing I was going to say. Do you know that expression? It's very widely used in the States. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Have you heard this expression used before?
Yes.
Look at the etymology of that expression. It was meant to show the impossibility of a situation because you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And yet we use this as a term derogatorily, to people who are unemployed or aren't working hard or, can't afford to live. We say they should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But the very etymology of that saying is, well, that's impossible. And yet, this is the burden. This is the burden we're putting on society, with these expectations.
We have to go back to first principles. On one hand, we can ask ourselves what is the entropic differential that gives rise to usefully exploitable labor, physical labor, that rearranging atoms can find configurations that we find more valuable. And then what we are now reaching is the ability to execute these steps of rearranging atoms rather than manually
Right.
ourselves through robots.
Yeah.
And that I think very clearly indicates that that an AI robot economy will be born and will thrive. Economy is an open-ended endeavor, so it will potentially add not a few percentages to P of any country or the planet, but it will multiply it manifold.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have also to start rethinking by first principles what it means to live a human life of purpose and dignity in a world where we cannot define our reason to exist, that of having a job and working 9 to 5, and the effort that we put in the first really has to be equaled by the effort that we put in the second. There is all the reason to dedicate ourselves to understanding the second question and potential answers to it. And we are failing to find the right balance. I am definitely at fault of being in love with technology and dedicating a lot of attention to technology and its incredible progress. And I dedicate some, but not enough, attention in analyzing and implementing tests and experiments and potential solutions to the question of human dignity and human purpose in the future.
No, I think that's obviously the goal and aim of AI. In fact, even if you look back at Walt Disney previewing their first prototype robots that they created for demonstrators, they would talk about them as labor-saving devices. Rosie the robot on the Jetsons, labor-saving device. She does the housework. She helps the kids with the homework. She cooks the meals, does the washing, ironing, cleaning, so forth. So we are freed up. Our time is freed up to pursue more meaningful things, not necessarily commerce, because again, as you pointed out, the nature of AI-based economies in the future will be as much of commerce and as much of the operation of our economy will automate as possible. That's what will make you competitive and create these multiples of wealth creation. But the distribution of that wealth becomes a big problem if we extend the current system to that future. So I know you said you're not an economist, but let's talk about what economies of the future might look like. You've said that it's going to be heavily automated, but how quickly, it's obviously going to be fits and starts, but how quickly do you see us talking about autonomous economies?
So William Gibson says the future is already
Right.
here. It's only not evenly distributed. A
I
couple of
think
examples.
that's a quote that us futurists use more than anything else, frankly.
A couple of examples. Chatbots were pretty much useless for a long time. Many of us have negative experiences with how limited they were. But as it is the case, they kept improving, passing potentially thresholds of usefulness. And in the past Valentine's season, which is the peak of the flower gifting industry, 1-800-Flowers, which is the infrastructure behind a lot of this happening, did not hire for that period 3,000 people that would have been hired the year before and the year before still, because they used a reliable chatbot that integrated with the e-commerce system was able to, for example, query an existing order, change the shipping destination, or confirm that it has been shipped. Relatively sophisticated operations in the specific area of that particular industry. So that kind of impact is already here. Another example, Jeremy Owyang, who is an investor in Silicon Valley, talks about a new kind of AI startup that after hiring the core team caps the number of humans and aims to increase the number of team members and the ability of the company to grow by automation. Just yesterday, we heard an interview where Durov, the founder of Telegram, confirmed that the close to 1 billion users of Telegram that require a very sizable infrastructure are managed by 30 people, 30, right? So we are already seeing a lot of things happening in the world that require, in proportion, an incredibly small human presence, and they just work very well. So I see this continuing, and we are then able to make decisions of what to do, where to apply our abilities, our curiosity, our passion, in which direction. Because again, the economy is an open system. That is, I think, the fundamentally important realization that everyone looking skeptically or with fear on AI and automation have to realize, and go in the direction that your passion and skills and talents show you, finding new things to create. I believe in the power of startups, not necessarily in the Silicon Valley sense of raising a lot of VC money and then selling for the appropriate multiple to a large company.
People to get in there and try some solutions. Yeah,
exactly. The entrepreneurial spirit that is shared by the Silicon Valley technology startup founders and the poorest merchants in India or Africa, because they want to make it. They want to find something that others find valuable.
And isn't that going to be the benefit of UBI? Because UBI. I mean, look, the research we did for Technosocialism was we found that in the 70 or so trials, one of the things that consistently happened is that people that were on universal basic income started their own businesses at 3 times higher rates than the general population. Because if you don't have to worry about putting food on the table as much, then you've got the freedom to explore. I think that's that's sort of the beauty of that, right?
I have one letter to add to UBI. I would like it to be UUBI, not only
what's
universal,
UUBI?
Not only universal, but unconditional.
Okay.
If you don't make it unconditional, then it becomes the lever to influence, by definition, condition people in directions that they are not choosing, but whatever the source of the non-unconditional UBI is, their government or the AI, whatever is the source, is conditioning them to do under arbitrary set of rules. So a bit like when you are born, no one asks you if you have the right to breathe, and no one tallies up the liters of air that you consumed until a certain age, and then you start paying back the loan of air that you received until that point, because we are able to count on the ecological support system of Earth. I think that we are at a point where truly we can design a system that gives an economic support to everyone, but without asking them to justify their behavior and their consumption. There are a lot of corollaries to this, but I think it is a necessary starting point, and the corollaries can be understood and studied. For example, there will be a fraction of people who are going to misuse the degree of freedom they gain through that support, and they need help, very simply, if they have an addiction, for example, or mental challenges. Just like today, they would need help, but that is not a reason to take that kind of support away from them. Another corollary is going to be that billionaires are going to receive it too, exactly because it is not expanded based on a means test. You just get it because you're human. And the billionaires, of course, will decide to give it away because they don't need it. And if they don't give it away, well, that is a reason to be happy about how small the number of billionaires is, because whatever the tally of that UBI given to them is not going to be break the bank. And I'm sure there are many others too, but it is, I think, one of the first systems that should be decoupled by government and as a consequence by politics and given over to an autonomous AI/machine system. And of course, we have the first example of that, because even if it is not universally distributed to everyone, Bitcoin is such an autonomous system.
I didn't know we were going to get into Bitcoin so late. Actually, it took us half an hour for you to get to Bitcoin, David. So, all right. So, while we're on the subject of Bitcoin, just quickly, we're approaching the halving. What do you think the price is going to do?
Well, historically, after a bit, because the first halving was something that no one experienced before. There were certain expectations. A lot of people expected the network would grind to halt because miners couldn't or wouldn't want to invest the energy anymore. But we are now at several halvings later.
We've had this happen a few times.
Now we know how the system behaves. First of all, the miners already started pricing the halving in. So to some degree, the price is already reflecting that. However, historically, we have seen an increase of up to an order of magnitude in the price of Bitcoin shifted a few months or a year later. So I expect that kind of price movement in the current wave as well, with Bitcoin definitely going past 100,000, maybe going past 200,000 before we reach the next all-time high, going towards the halving that is coming in the future. And
there's a lot of volatility at the moment, for sure.
Well, if you look at the charts, and I'm not one of those people reading the tea leaves of daily shared superstitions in order to create post hoc justifications of why I lost my money.
You're not a pump and dump sort of guy, yeah.
Or moving the lines showing trends according to any kind of extension of my theories that can justify every possible line. However, in the range of volatility in proportion to the price of Bitcoin versus the US dollar radically diminished. When we are talking about a 5% drop in the price of Bitcoin, well, years before we would be talking about a 20% or a 30% drop or a 50% drop, right? And
well, it's
those
up
are
5% today, so that's good news considering I bought at 60 and it's up to 65 again today. So I'm happy, dude. But so you say it's going to go up to 100. But let's talk about the fact that you were involved in one of the first DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations.
Well, the first one, the DAO called the DAO, yes.
The DAO, yes, exactly, the DAO. And this is a early prototype of the type of constructs we're going to have in an autonomous economy. Smart contracts, autonomous organizations, AI-led marketplaces, which is all very interesting and exciting. But as we use that more and more and we get the benefits of that, then a lot of really interesting things start to happen. First of all, what we call a company is no longer necessarily a group of people that come together. This is the question from Effie. These technologies are so expensive. Will we ever see a one-person startup innovating outside of Silicon Valley, or is it only Silicon Valley? But, we've heard people talk about these, like Chamath talks about, 15-person unicorns and so forth. But it sort of occurs to me that when we start thinking about the conventions we have in terms of what is a corporation, when a corporation is run almost exclusively on a code base, is it still a corporation or is it just a chunk of code? How are regulators going to regulate a bank that is 99% artificial intelligence? Does the AI need a banking license? Does it have to be a narrow AI?
We have examples that answer this question in a certain way. And going back to the question of that was asked from our audience, as a matter of fact, we not only have a lot of people who create pretty sizable organizations alone, but there is even a term for them. They are called solopreneurs. Solopreneurs, right. A great example is Peter Levels, who created more than 70 different projects, and he's running a lot of infrastructure for remote work. He created an AI based photo shooting platform and an AI-based interior design platform. And he's just a guy coding, traveling as a digital nomad. And people like him, there are thousands. The number is probably a couple of order of magnitude more, hundreds of thousands, to the point that countries are now creating regulatory frameworks to attract them, digital nomad visa systems, so that they can take advantage of the value creation and the taxation that these people bring. Now, the other point that you made about how do potentially regulators look at autonomous organizations, well, we are seeing that already, because the main developer of a platform that allows people to make crypto transactions anonymous is in jail in the Netherlands at the behest of US regulators that put the piece of software on the sanction list. I would need to grab a device
That's
to look
okay.
up
It's all right.
his name,
It's okay.
and maybe I will add it as a comment after we
Sure.
end our session. But there are a lot of unprecedented things in here. First, that a piece of software is put on the sanction list, not people, not organizations, a piece of software. And that the developer of an open source system that is completely detached from the way that that system is used is then taken into custody, awaiting trial for more than a year in a European country, and everyone is powerless to really highlight the absurdity of this. Another example is the recent declaration by the SEC or communication that they are about to sue Uniswap. Uniswap is also a completely autonomous software that enables matchmaking between sellers and buyers of certain pairs of crypto tokens. And the SEC a few years ago gave the green light to Uniswap to operate in a preliminary manner. And now they changed their mind and they are suing the Uniswap, which again is a piece of software. So today's regulators are uncomprehending to interpret in a benign manner what they are doing towards the power and the value of our autonomous organizations. And there's a lot of legal groundwork that needs to be put in place before they can thrive in a manner that is not under constant attack by the regulatory and political systems all over the world. And there are signs here of this happening as well. Next Monday, I will be speaking here in Seoul at the inaugural seminar of a new organization being born for AI copyrights. And rights endowed to and associated with artificial intelligence is going to be the frontier through which the legal rights of autonomous organizations will be established, and an enormous amount of economic growth unlocked because it gets unshackled by the interpretations belonging to the way the world was centuries ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the current discussion about intellectual property rights, in generative AI and so forth. It's, we developed IP law and copyright law hundreds of years ago when the extent of copyright was a newspaper or printed page, and here we are dealing with, AI generated content that can be generated as video and data and so forth. So it's pretty clear we have to come up with some sort of new languages. Thanks, Effie, for your comment. And before I forget to, I wanted to thank Jonathan Gibson, who's watching us on YouTube. Shout out to Jonathan. He let me know that I was using the wrong microphone for the broadcast. So I thank him for that. It was a settings glitch. So thank you. So the audio for the first 20 minutes was a problem. But Effie says Swiss regulators have a clear framework around DAOs, but that's one component of it. I think, I do see a whole lot of regulatory arenas where we're going to have to sort of rethink this, and there's going to be structural changes. Like if we think just about longevity treatments as an example, or healthcare in the world of AI. So healthcare becomes highly quantified. We know now we can track your biomarkers with extreme precision. We know your biological age from your cellular health condition, your telomere lengths, various things. We can get that into an algorithm. And now we've got a mechanism by which we can maintain your health for a longer period, or your health span, to give you not only a longer life, but quality of life. But this requires a complete rethink of the way we think about medicine. Have you read that book by Peter Attia, the book called Outlive, David?
No, I read a lot of longevist literature, and I am, of course, very healthily interested and co-interested as a human in the ability of living longer. But let me give you a contrarian interpretation of the scale of the challenges. And that stems from the fact that in order to find out what are the needs of the individual and the stress on society when we have people of 200 years age around us, well, it cannot take less than another 100 years or more.
Right.
We cannot just produce 200-year-old people on demand. We have to wait until they are 200 years old, right? And
I hope that you and I are going to be amongst those 200-year-old people, friend.
Well, let's meet in 21, 24 and find out. We will only be 150 or so, but I think that will be a first signpost. That's right. So and by the way, just recently, in order to mentally train myself, I decided to measure my age rather than a proportion of an ambitious but possible 100-year lifespan, a pretty ambitious 1,000-year lifespan. So let's say I'm 60 and I'm 6% of that lifespan, right? But I think, once again, from first principles, one of the challenges of this thinking is that it recreates necessarily a homeostatic view of the individual, meaning that it strengthens our ability and resilience and adaptability to maintain ourselves as we are, physically, in our metabolism, mentally, and any way that an individual is defined. And the problem with that is that the world is soon and much faster than 100 years is going to be dominated by what I call homeodynamic entities. A homeodynamic entity, as opposed to a homeostatic entity, is one that is adapted to maintain its identity in a rapidly changing environment. If you are part of a herd and you need to migrate with the seasons, well, next year, if you need to go a bit further, you can do it. And the next year, still a bit further, you can do it. But if the year after, the environment tells you that you have to cross an ocean in order to survive, well, the entire herd will die. And what is happening with AI is that AIs are much more adept in being adaptable.
Right.
An experiment I ran.
We see that now, right? We see the rate of change in terms of AI adaptation is this is why I get frustrated with people like Gary Marcus, because it's like there's so much money going to artificial intelligence. We are going to fix this problem, right? And Robert likes to say of Gary, he's right until he's wrong, and when he's going to be wrong, he's going to be significantly wrong. But it's like when we start looking at these problems, we know the trajectory we're on. We don't do nearly enough thinking about how we should adapt. We do far more debate over whether it's going to happen or not, while we're throwing every dollar we can at making it happen. We're still going, but we don't know if AGI is actually going to happen, right? And it seems to me in climate's a similar situation. It seems to me that one of our basic human flaws is that we can see the future coming and we don't start to adapt until it's right at our doorstep.
The ability to have our theories die instead of us is a great revolution that our insight and introspection and self-awareness created. It's the evolution of the theories of mind. But even though we have completed that mimetic jump, we have to make the effort and become even better at forecasting, backcasting, modeling, understanding, debating, coming to a consensus, executing. That is the challenge that AI is giving us, because AI is going to be able to do all those things in a manner that will astonish humans. We will be breathless in looking at the sharp, beautiful reasoning that evidently puts things in perspective and highlights creative solutions to problems that we were struggling with so long.
Including longevity, as an example, or diseases.
Yeah.
And it could also solve problems like energy utilization, resource utilization in general. It could like eliminate diseases, thereby giving us better quality of life longer term. But then why
there is a German startup doing fusion research in a very innovative tokamak design that, instead of being very symmetric like the European tokamak, it has weird shapes in the superconducting magnets in order to improve the stability of the plasma field.
Was that designed by AI?
And that was designed by AI.
Oh, I thought you were getting to that.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got like 8 minutes left. And we've been talking about some of the challenges and so forth. But let's get optimistic. What makes you most optimistic about this future, and why would you say that? Because I've got Jonathan sending comments here about the elites having access to these technologies and so forth. But why are you optimistic that AI is going to be beneficial for everybody?
So, Jonathan, welcome. You are part of the elite. You are watching this. You are following this. It means that you have access to the internet. You're smart. You're curious. You apply critical thinking. You have everything you need in order to thrive in the world that is coming. I think one of the most important points about the AI tools that are being born is that there is zero barrier to entry in order to get our hands dirty, to test them, to experiment with them. Just a few weeks ago, with a bunch of AI tools, I created a musical video that appropriately, poetically talks about, in an 80s new wave style, of how we are going to dance proudly together with AGIs as we design new worlds. And you can find the video on YouTube if you search for When We Were Divine. That is the title. So the way I felt using that is as if I were a producer, director, having being surrounded by talent specialized in various things: writing the lyric, designing the script, animating the videos, putting the music together, all this, and I was able to do it in a few hours, in 2-3
Mm.
hours, right? And that to me is especially exhilarating because even if both my parents are artists, my father was an actor, my mother is a painter. It looks like it jumped. My daughter and middle son are both artistic, but I have never expressed myself artistically. But now I can. I gain new degrees of freedom and literally like Tarzan of the jungle that couldn't speak and he didn't have an inner dialogue. And then after falling in love with Jane, she taught him to speak and he found himself being able to express his feelings, to express his joy, returning to the jungle, telling the monkeys his adventures. That is what we are all gaining, incredible new cognitive powers of self-expression and self-realization that is not only in the arts. Imagine a PhD,
Augmented intelligence, right? Instead of artificial.
extended cognition,
Right.
where our exocortex is part of
Exocortex. I
what
like it.
defines
Yeah.
us, and we grow and we intertwine our passions and our desires with the tools and with other human beings using them the same. What we are doing today is magical, across
Comparative for
continents.
sure. Yeah.
What is happening right at this moment is incredible, and everyone can take advantage of it. I was on an interview like this with a 15-year-old child or person in Pakistan
Mhm.
who,
With real time translation.
well, he used ChatGPT to render his questions in anglicized or turned into phonemes that with his native Urdu, he could read. So even if he didn't speak English, he was pronouncing the questions quite well. At least I could understand them. And then he's translating after the fact. But it is just fantastic. When people take advantage of these tools, they find ways to improve themselves and to be part of the future that we are designing.
That's optimistic. I mean, I know we've got some commenters that are a little bit less convinced about this, but I will say that the compute power, if we just think of it in terms of pure intelligence, and compute relates to intelligence, humanity always strives to learn so we can be more intelligent, so we can apply that knowledge to better solutions for the future. So I think you have to assume that artificial intelligence, at least as a tool set, is going to give us the ability to solve problems we can't solve today. The one concern that we have throughout this, and I'll finish off with Effie's comment here, is that we do have a potential for digital feudalism here. We do have, the ability to. We have the potential for massive wealth capture from artificial intelligence that doesn't really get distributed well, and I think that's a concern that a lot of people share. I do think there are ways around it, and I do think that the future's going to be much better with AI in it than it is. But I think we have to let go of our sacred cows. We have to let go specifically of some of the philosophies around economics and growth and things like that, because we could grow. I mean, AI could get incredible growth for the economy. But at the same time, we have to be a bit more responsible with climate change and all of these other things happening, in terms of maybe growth is not the primary objective here. Maybe it's growth of the species, growth of our intelligence, growth of our capabilities, growth of our ability to give people long-lasting, happy lives rather than just GDP growth, and I think that's sort of what I hope for, but I'm not sure how we make that transition yet. But I am, we talk about it pretty much every time we get together, David. We talk about this issue of this transitional phase. But, I'm positive.
We have to recognize the reality of the emotions of people who feel anguished, who feel uncertain, who feel that they need help, and starting from that recognition, we can build the tools of human empowerment that are essential for our optimistic views to become real. If we ignore that sentiment, it will radicalize enough people to stop the progress of human technology, and as a consequence, it will stop the opportunity for the positive outcomes to materialize too. So we can be egotistic in helping the others to be part of this future, and we have the power to do that with these tools that we are using right now: communication, conversations, debating, understanding, experimenting. These are the basic blocks of finding out what works.
We get our way through. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, it's been fantastic to chat with you, David. It always is great. And I will say thank you for your persistence in making this event happen today, because I had a really busy week and you're on my case saying, don't forget. And we got it together. It's great. We should do this more regularly. And we should invite some others.
Thank you. I would be happy to.
This conversation. But enjoy
Absolutely.
Seoul. Enjoy your time with your daughter and your family. And thank you once again for participating. And for those of you that are listening and you like this sort of conversation, stay tuned, because we are working on an event next year in Dubai, and one later this year in Thailand in August, and Dubai in April next year, where we're going to gather the world's preeminent futurists like David to an event there to talk about these problems and see if we can't, get some solutions in play, get some adaptation happening. But how do people follow your work, David?
DavidOrban.com and David Orban on practically every platform.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once again. And that will let you guys have a great weekend. Thank you, David, for joining us. That's it from the Futurists. And as Robert and I like to say at the end of the show each week, we'll see you in the future.